Yeah, brother. Woohoo!
Audio's rolling. We're going. We haven't recorded a podcast together in decades.
3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I recorded Morgan, talked to her, got canceled, and then was Phoebe right after that?
Yep.
Then I talked to Phoebe and redeemed myself, I think. And then here we are, you and me.
Yeah.
How you been? Since we don't talk ever unless we're on the podcast. So
That's not true. I talk to you like 74,000 times a day.
yeah.
Yeah. I made homemade cinnamon rolls for the first time ever today.
Bussin'.
They turned out so good. Homemade cinnamon rolls with homemade cream cheese frosting.
It's dangerous to know that you have that ability now.
I know.
So what's in them though? Are they healthy? No.
Yeah, I used all organic ingredients.
That doesn't mean they're healthy.
Well, they've got sugar, obviously. It's flour, butter, egg, milk, sugar, cream cheese, powdered sugar, brown sugar, and cinnamon.
Gosh, I almost fell asleep listening to that. That was boring. I'm glad you're the one that cooks.
Yeah.
I don't have to. Let's put our phones on do not disturb, please.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm getting all these freaking emails. You know what it is my work.
OpenShift posted. Anyway.
Yeah. Really annoying.
So this week on the podcast, what we're talking about, I think marriage, huh? Well, it's been a thing that I've been thinking about and I've been bringing up to you lately is, one, it's a lot of people that I see around that have kind of a misunderstanding of what marriage is or what relationships are, I guess, too. I think it's easy for us to kind of feel like we're not qualified to talk about that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I think that because of what we've gone through, we understand.
Right. We may not be 50 years into our marriage, but we've had 50 years worth of problems in our marriage so far.
It's a good way of putting it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Feels like more than that.
I know.
It is kind of hard. It feels like it's, when I look at our marriage compared to other people's, I know that may not be the healthiest thing to do, but I'll look at other people's marriages and I'll be like, I wonder if it's as hard for them as it is for us. Yeah. Like, do they get in all these arguments, or do their arguments get as heated as ours do? Right. I would say lately we've been good about it, but I think still there's been moments where we're both.
I think it's mostly my fault when our arguments,
nice.
it is my fault when our arguments get heated, because I take everything personally, and it's hard not to take things personally. It's hard for me. And that's something I've really been working on. Like when I start to feel myself getting irritated, like, okay, I don't take it personally. It's not about me.
Well, I do it too.
And you feed off of my energy.
I think I take it personally too. I think I take the disrespect, I think, is what I take personally. So if we're having a conversation and you're yelling at me instead of talking to me, I feel disrespected. And I think so I'll let that get to me. And so I'll feel like you aren't. Yeah. I think it's a big respect thing for me, at least.
I don't know why I do that. Like, I can't. It's
because we know what each other's buttons are. I think that's the biggest thing in marriage.
I think part of it also is I have a hard time like being able to just like have a normal conversation and be like, okay, let me listen to you, and then I'll talk, and then you'll listen to me.
Especially when you feel like you're being attacked.
Yeah, because I take everything personally and I feel attacked. It's like right now I can sit here and talk about like, oh yeah, I take everything personally and I shouldn't. But in the moment, my brain is not thinking that. In that moment, if like me feeling attacked or like taking things personally, it's like fight or flight mode. And I think that has to do with like my childhood and like how I grew up, because I grew up in a household that we were constantly like, everyone was yelling at each other. Everybody took everything personally. And I grew up with like 5 brothers and sisters, and it was just, nobody had respect for anybody. And so I think that
it's every
is
man
like,
for themselves.
yeah. And it was like, to be heard, you had to make a big scene and you had to yell. It felt like, or now looking back, I think that was the issue.
That makes sense, because yeah, it does. I mean, the louder you get, the more people hear you. So that makes sense. But so I get frustrated with that, but we're doing better, I think, at communicating.
Yeah.
It's a big part. I think I was sitting in the sauna the other day. I was telling you about this, and me and Mitchell were talking about our marriages, and then a random guy was in the sauna with us, and he goes, I'm hearing you guys talking, like, sorry to butt in, but I'm a marriage counselor and I'm hearing you guys talk about your marriages and stuff. And I was just like, that's so crazy. Totally a God thing.
Yeah, it's so
But
God.
He, I think he was a Christian, or he is a Christian too, because he asked us and then gave us some advice about praying together and stuff like that. So that was cool. But one of his biggest points, I think, was, and I think we watched one of his videos, where he was basically saying there aren't really any off limits conversations to have. So you guys can disagree about anything. It's how you disagree and how you communicate about it. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Because I think there's people who communicate in an unhealthy way, and then like they just start yelling at each other, don't listen to each other. And so if you can figure out how to communicate with each other, I mean, that's something we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, I think that people are ever changing, right? Like, you're always going to be changing. I'm never going to like in 10 years from now, you're going to be a different person than you are right now. And so I think we're always going to have to figure out how to communicate with each other. And it's not going to be just a one and done. Oh, we figured it out. We're not going to have any more problems ever.
We watched a video and now we know how to communicate, and our marriage is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so that made me think of, we posted a video that ended up kind of going viral, I guess. I think it's over 1 million. What's considered viral anymore?
I would say 1 million views is viral.
Okay. So we got, one of our videos has 1.1 million or 1.2 million, I think. And it was me talking about how more people should be getting their wedding rings tattooed. And it was really controversial. Everyone's like, no, because marriages don't last forever. And a lot of comments were saying people change. And I think that's just a sad view of marriage. I understand it though.
Yeah.
I understand people saying people change. They're not saying that people change. Like that's what they're saying, but that's not what they mean. They're saying some people end up being a worse person than you initially thought that they were. Because I don't think that they're really saying if your spouse changes, you should divorce them. Because change isn't a bad thing. Change.
I think
you should be changing.
Are talking about like your spouse changing and becoming very like physically abusive.
Yeah.
Or mentally abusive, verbally abusive, or changing like your spouse becomes like addicted to pornography and ends up like cheating on you or something. Like, I think that is what people are afraid of. Not so much, oh, my spouse is different. He likes different hobbies and I don't like those hobbies. I don't think it's like that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So they mean they're different or they change in a bad way. But even then, I mean, I don't think that that's the right view of marriage. Because I think that people kind of throw out it's like the abortion debate where people say abortion should be allowed because what about this one case where a 12-year-old girl gets pregnant, so therefore all abortions should be allowed. Like, so they'll use that argument. They'll appeal to your emotions in order to try to push the rest in. And I think that saying, what about abusive spouses, is that one situation. Because think about this too. Today, everything is abuse.
Yeah.
Oh, he financially abused me. He didn't give me enough money for me to do what I wanted on the weekends. Or he emotionally abused me. Well, what do you mean? Oh, well, he didn't ask me how I felt at the end of the day. He didn't care about how I felt. He didn't want to listen. Like, and I'm not saying that that I'm not trying to defend men who don't act how they should in a marriage. But I am saying these like little, it seems like everyone's trying to find an excuse to say that their spouse abuses them so that they can leave a relationship, or they're trying to find this perfect relationship.
I think it's just people are afraid of commitment.
Well, if you're already married to someone and you're committed to them, like, I don't understand why people will separate after that,
right.
because, he emotionally abused me or whatever.
Is I feel like most marriages are not biblical marriages, and they're not rooted in God, you know? And so these people, they make the commitment, but it's not really, there's no foundation. So it's very wishy-washy. They don't have this conviction of, oh, I need to make this work because this is what God wants for me.
And they don't have an understanding of human nature. That's what a Christian worldview offers, is that we're all messed up. Mm-hmm. And you marry someone and the goal isn't trying to like fix that person. The goal is I think it's to make babies. I think that's one of, if not the primary goal of marriage. Because otherwise, marriage could be between two men or two women, which it's not. Marriage is not between two men. It's not between two women. Marriage is between man and woman for the purpose of creating life. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for that purpose, then God would say, men and men can be together. Women, it's whoever you like. And I think the reason he doesn't do that is because it puts your sexual preference really above having children. Or, so you think about, I mean, this is kind of going on a tangent, but a gay couple who pays a surrogate to give them a baby, that is trying to have your cake and eat it too. You're putting your that's what being gay is, right? It's a sexual preference. You're putting that preference over
God's design.
Yeah, it's over God's design, and it's like you're not going to have kids.
God's will for you.
If you're choosing to live a homosexual lifestyle, then you're not going to be able to have kids. And I think that's just the way it is. And there's too many people trying to control. They think that kids are a right. It's your right to have kids, but it's not. It's a duty more than it is a right to get married, for a man to find a woman.
Ultimately, it's God who says, because the Bible says children are blessings, right? And it's God's decision if he's going to bless you with children or not, right? And I don't want to talk too much about this because I feel like I just am not qualified to talk about the Bible, you know? Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit. But yeah, so children are a duty, and they're given to us because God has entrusted us with them. And so to bypass God.
They're not our children, they're God's children.
They're human beings. And so to bypass God and say, it's kind of like stealing. You know, like God has designed something to be a certain way, and then you're going to just go around that.
Well, would you say that Tim and Allison adopting you was stealing?
No, because I think that there's a difference between them fulfilling a need or fixing something in the world that is broken and trying to control their own life and how it goes. Does that make sense? So part of our broken world is there being a lot of children who need homes. And I think that those children need and have the right to a mother and father. That's why the only way that children can be made is with a mother and a father.
Mm-hmm.
And so children do have a right to their parents, their mom and their dad. And if that's taken away, then that gap needs to be filled. And this is where people say, well, what about gay people adopting?
Yeah, see, because that's where I'm kind of going right now is like I'm not saying that I agree with it, but you can't say that in today's world. I mean, you can say it all you want, but in today's world, somebody is going to say, oh, well, would you rather have those children on the street or in foster care or with a gay couple that loves them and takes care of them?
Yeah. And I've heard that before.
I'm thinking, I don't agree with, people being gay, right? Like, I don't agree with it. Love them still, right? But I would almost prefer a child rather than being in foster care or being homeless and not having any parents. I would prefer them having parents that take care of them and give them a home and give them food and that's from a motherly point of view. It's like, I don't want any child to suffer. And you know from experience how bad foster care can be.
Yeah. And this is hard because I think that trying to balance the ideal of how God has created things and how things are is difficult.
Yeah.
And so we have to kind of compromise. I mean, I think Jesus was talking about how the only reason people get divorced is because we're hard-headed, basically. And we want a divorce. And so God had to basically offer us a way to get divorced. But that's not what he wants. And so I think that gay parents adopting, I'm uncomfortable with it. And I think the primary reason is because they have chosen their sexual desires first. And so then to put a kid in a home where the parents care so much about having sex with someone of the same sex, like they care about that so much that they're not willing to part from that to have a kid. That's what I'm saying, is that their goals and their goals aren't in the right place. But then you could say, well, we all sin. We all have issues that we struggle with. So should kids not go into any home where there's sin? And no, I don't think that's safe to say. But I mean, and I'm sure that there's more that we can get into. I don't know enough about, I don't have a strong enough case for gay parents not adopting children for the sake of fulfilling a kind of a unmet need. But there was a story, I think this week or last week, that I heard where this girl had asked one of her gay dads to be a mom. And so she asked one of them to start identifying as her mom because she has this desire for a mom. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's
where it can be problematic because children need a mother and a father. I think that I think it is a necessity that children have the nurturing care of a mother.
That's
nurturing
the ideal.
Love of a mother.
Yeah.
No, I think it's necessary to bring up a functioning functioning human being with no mental issues. Well, nowadays you hear, I have daddy issues, and people laugh it off. I have daddy issues myself. But if I would have had a dad who was loving and caring and I had known the love of a father growing up, I wouldn't have had sex with guys that I barely knew just so I could fill some sort of void. I would have, if I had a father who showed me what it was to respect my mother, I probably would have chosen, I would have picked and choose a little differently who I gave myself to, I would have had more respect for myself had I had a father who showed me love and respect, but I didn't. I had a father who was abusive and who wasn't really a father. And I think that is so important to have a loving father who teaches you love and respect and who has like a biblical authority over you, not an abusive authority. And a mother who is loving and nurturing and shows you what it's like, what a godly woman is supposed to be, or a father who shows you what a godly man is supposed to be. I think that's so important to bring up a functioning human being with who doesn't have all these mental issues. I think that is part of the reason now that all these people, including myself, have so many mental issues and so many self-respect issues and depression and all these other things is because most people, people that I grew up with, have broken homes or parents who are not Christians. And they don't live as Christians and they're abusive and or they have no rules and they don't care about what their kids do. They just let their kids go and do whatever they want. I think that's a real big issue. I think it's very important that kids have both.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the ideal so that we can live as close to that as possible. But I think that you have to also acknowledge the brokenness and that we all fall short of the glory of God.
You don't have to, I'm not saying that parents have to be perfect. Part of being a Christian is acknowledging when you're wrong and asking forgiveness, right? And repenting. I think that if that had been modeled to me, and if that was modeled to most children growing up, like, hey, mommy and daddy, we sin too. But it's really important that we acknowledge our sin, we give it to God, and we ask forgiveness, and we repent from it. So will you forgive me for yelling at you today? I think that's so important. That's so important. Because nowadays what you have is, and I'm even like this, is you have people who, when you point out their sin, you point out their flaws, they take it personally, and they feel attacked.
Well, if that's...
And then you have, this man just misgendered me. And they feel so attacked. Or you have, he just, he asked me to do the dishes and I couldn't handle that. It was very misogynistic and blah, 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 blah. You have all these things. It's a freaking snowball effect. It's just,
it's hard. It's exhausting to talk about this kind of thing because
because there's nothing we can do to change it. That's what's exhausting about it. Is like, I want it to change, but I know it's not going to.
I think that's what's beautiful about marriage. I think bringing us back around to that is within our marriage, within you and me, we have the ability to control our kind of section. Maybe that's not the right word, but our family, we have control over. So we have control over us being in a heterosexual marriage. So it's you and me. And then having kids, we have kids. They're going to have a mom and a dad until we die. And I can say that, like, I know for certain that you and me are going to be together for the rest of our lives. So I know our kids are going to have us. I know we're probably going to give them bad advice at some points. I don't think we're going to be perfect parents.
No, not at all.
I mean, already we've messed up.
We're very imperfect parents.
But the cards are kind of in our favor, I would say, because we understand what the ideal is. And so we're living as close as we can to that ideal, mm-hmm. so that things are a little bit easier on us. Yeah. Things are already hard. There's already so much brokenness that we have to deal with outside of our family. So if we can control the brokenness within our family, then that just makes us a little bit more prepared to take on the world a little bit more.
Yeah.
So like if we're going to sit here and we can control our our approach on marriage and things like that, so we can control our relationship. That's what I think allows us to have a platform like the podcast, so that we can then go out and tell people like, okay, this is I don't want to say like, this is how you do it. Like, just be like us. But we definitely couldn't say those kinds of things if we were going through a divorce, you know?
Right.
And divorce is just something that I don't understand why anyone would, maybe that's not the right way of putting it. I don't understand why a lot of people choose divorce over figuring it out. I understand why some do. If your husband beats you to almost death every night or whatever. But I think there's so many other excuses that people have on why they want a divorce. And I don't think that a lot of them are justified.
The biggest reason is because like I said earlier, like most marriages are not rooted in Christ.
Yeah.
Because
it's a social thing now. It's not a biblical thing anymore. The word marriage means I like someone and I'm going to tell them that I like them until I don't. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell the world, I'm going to put a ring on my finger and this is how I show that I like one person. Not even that I love one person. Or if it is love, then it's not the discipline of love. It's the butterflies in my stomach kind of love. And that's not what marriage is. I kind of brought it up earlier as a joke, but have you heard of prenuptial agreements? I think that's what they're called, prenups. What's your understanding of it?
I've heard the term, but I don't know what it is.
What
is it like? Like you sign something so that if you ever get a divorce, you don't have to like split everything 50-50. Like what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine.
I can't say I know what a prenup is, and I'm kind of proud that I don't. And because I understand very little about it, but from what I understand, it comes into play when you get a divorce. Yeah. And so I think that.
So by signing a prenup, you're basically saying, when we get divorced, this is my insurance.
I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. People wouldn't say when we get divorced, they'll say if we ever.
Yeah. Implying that it's a possibility. Whereas for me and you, it's like not even a possibility.
I think so people were asking us, what are your thoughts on prenups? And my immediate reaction is no.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about even what it is. But from what I understand, it comes into play when you get divorced. And I think that anytime, I've told Emily this, if you install a door in a house, it's hard to not look at or consider or go through that door. I'm not sure how I told you that, how I worded it before.
I don't think I've ever heard that from you.
Well, it's like,
so maybe you were telling someone else.
Maybe, but it's like the idea of, another way that I put it was, if you flip a coin with heads and tails, then it's 50% chance that you're going to land on heads or tails. But if you flip a coin with two heads, you're never going to land on tails. So I think having an option of something, even if people, I think I'll try to argue for it. So people say, you don't understand people. Like some people are super crazy and they may be an entirely different person from who you thought you married. And then you want to be prepared for that. But so they'll say it's not as much like when you get divorced. It's kind of like if you have a fire extinguisher in your house, are you saying that, do you have a fire extinguisher because you think your house is going to catch on fire? You know? And it's like, no, I'm preparing for if it does. And here's my counter. I'm kind of having a conversation with myself here, but my counter argument to that is, I don't think that a fire extinguisher increases the risk of you having a fire in your house. Whereas I think something like a prenuptial agreement, I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right. But a prenup, it is prenuptial.
Yeah.
I might be saying that wrong, but I think that having that does kind of increase your risk of having a fire in your house, to go back to that.
Yeah.
So I'll read what the internet says. A prenup, short for prenuptial agreement, is a legally binding contract between two people who are about to get married. It outlines the terms that will govern their marriage, including the division of assets, debts, and spousal support in the event of a divorce or death.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce or death does change things a little bit, and we'll go back to that. But contract must be signed before the wedding day for it to be valid. Key aspects of a prenup: assets and debts, property rights, spousal support, other terms. So it sounds like it's an agreement for what to happen if you split up.
Yeah.
And one of those options being a divorce, which I think is what most people understand a prenup to be. In the case of death, why would you need a prenup in death?
I don't know. Isn't that what life insurance is?
No, I think life insurance is when you die and then your spouse gets money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't understand why you would need a prenup if you die. Wouldn't your spouse get everything?
Right.
Or unless you didn't want your spouse to have everything.
Maybe that's what it is let's sign this. When I die,
When I
you're not
die,
going to
my
get everything.
mom gets the house.
Right. Or the dog or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know what? I'm still going to say.
So it kind of works as like a will also.
That's kind of what it seems like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, I'm against it.
Yeah.
Prenups are stupid. I'll say it. Prenups are stupid.
Oh my
And
gosh.
if you've signed one, tear it up. I don't know if that's how you.
I don't think you can get rid of it that easily.
Yeah, maybe there's something more that you got to do, but yeah, I think if you have that option, here's my position. If you choose to divorce your spouse, you need to deal with the consequences of splitting a soul, because two become one in marriage. And if you split that in half, there's going to be natural consequences of that. And I think that if you're not ready for those consequences, and if those consequences aren't kind of the fire under your feet during marriage, and you just have a nice soft pillow, like there's a cliff, right? In marriage, there's this cliff, and if you jump off of it, like it's going to suck. And so I think a prenup is like, I'm going to put a nice big pillow down there, and in case we ever get divorced, we have a nice soft pillow to jump on in case we ever jump off that cliff. But I'm saying there needs to be spikes and fire down there, because I'm never jumping off that cliff. I think the more appealing that you make jumping off that cliff, the more chance there is that you are going to actually jump.
I do see like the benefit of having it though.
Let's hear it.
Well,
I'm ready to argue with you.
Because for those instances where you have, like, for example, somebody is in a very abusive marriage and they want to get divorced. Say their spouse decides, I'm going to take everything from you. You're not getting anything. You're not getting any money. You're not getting the house. You're not getting the cars. I'm going to screw you over so bad so that you need me. I think in that case, a prenup would have been a good idea.
So this is kind of, the more that you have, the better idea a prenup becomes. This is one of the arguments that I've heard.
Not just the more you have.
The more you have, that's what you're talking about. I'm going to take the car. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to take the house. I'm going to take this and that. Those are all things.
Those are all necessities.
So no, they're not. You don't need.
A house is a necessity.
No, it's not.
A car in this day and age, a necessity.
No, they're
You're
not
saying
necessities.
having a home is not a necessity?
No.
Why?
I think that having your own home is not a necessity.
You mean owning a home?
Owning a home is not a necessity. I think there's plenty of people who don't own their own home. Now, if we're just talking about a roof over your head, is that a necessity? What is necessary for what? Necessary for a good American life? Necessary to be fat and happy? Maybe. Is it necessary to have a roof over your head to be fat and happy? Sure. Is it necessary to have a roof over your head
I think, okay,
to live your life.
pause.
No.
Pause. Because you're saying there is never any good reason to get a divorce. But the Bible says different. And I think that we have to go off of that. The Bible says if you are in an abusive relationship, you can get a divorce. If your spouse cheats on you, you can get a divorce.
Those are all terrible reasons, though.
I don't think your spouse abusing you is a terrible reason.
No, you're saying that the Bible says there's no good reason to get a divorce. Divorce is never a good option.
Right. Right. But you can't deny that you can't say there are no reasons you should get a divorce because the Bible says otherwise.
Well,
the Bible gives
yes
examples where divorce is okay and maybe necessary.
It's more tolerable, I think, than acceptable, if that makes sense. That's what I'm saying. When I'll have to find this.
I just don't think it doesn't sit right with me
to say that divorce is never okay.
When you say divorce is because I've experienced situations where divorce was so necessary.
It's not. Divorce is not necessary. I think hear me out. We all have our own free will. We all have the ability to control our behavior. And so if you're the man of the house and you're a complete piece of garbage, the better choice is for you to get your act together. Divorce is not like, oh, this is our only option.
Okay, but
if a guy refuses
you're saying that you're speaking from a biblical view. Okay, most people don't have that.
No, that's the truth. It's just the truth.
The example that I'm talking about is like, yeah, like the man does not see that he has any issues. He's very abusive, very narcissistic. I think in a situation like that, where your well-being and your children's well-being are compromised, I think it's necessary. And it just doesn't sit right with me to hear you say that there's never a reason, because I grew up in the reason it was necessary.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I understand that, yeah, some people are just too hard-hearted to make it work. I think what I'm trying to say is that it's not out of your control. There's one other person, yes.
Well, it is out of your control. You're in control of yourself. You cannot control anybody else.
Right.
So if one day you became very abusive and you decided, and like you just didn't see that you were doing anything wrong, you didn't want to change, I can't control you. I could ask you to change. I could ask you to do better. And if you didn't, at some point, I have to say enough is enough. If my well-being and my children's well-being are compromised and I feel like we are in danger, I think it's very necessary to separate yourself from that situation. And if that means divorce, then that means divorce is necessary in that situation.
See, this is what's hard though, is because it's like, I don't think that that's the majority of cases. I don't think that that's why people get divorces. I think a lot of people are getting...
I'm not saying that it is, but you saying, and you get on me about this a lot, saying like 100%. You're like, you can't say it's 100%. That's how I'm feeling right now.
You're about to get me with my own...
Yeah.
You're about to Uno reverse me.
I am. Uno reverse. You cannot say that it is never necessary and that there's never there's never a reason to get divorced. You could say like, there's never a good reason. Obviously being abused is very bad.
Yeah.
That's like a bad situation.
That's what I'm saying. Divorce is never a good thing, and it should never be, it should be as painful as, it should be a painful thing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Divorce should hurt. It shouldn't be an easy thing to do. And I think that by making it...
it can hurt, but I think it could also be freeing.
Well, I'm saying that it should, okay. So let's say jumping off the cliff, go back to that analogy. if jumping off the cliff, you think you have a better chance at living, I guess, jumping off the cliff than what you have to face at the top of that cliff, then it's up to you to decide. But my argument is that I don't know if that's what I want to say, so don't quote me on that. But my argument is that the jumping off that cliff should be a hard thing. It shouldn't be, there's a parachute right there, there's a pillow at the bottom. And so that all that does is make it so that you have to tolerate less. So that way, oh, my husband didn't ask me how I'm doing today, I'm going to ask him for a divorce. That's what I'm saying. Not my husband abused me, like he's leaving me with black and blue marks all over my body. I'm going to be better off if I jump off this cliff. I think that should be more the mindset. And a lot of women are going to come after me for that, I think. But, and I'm not trying to defend guys who abuse their wives at all. All I'm saying is that divorce is an ugly thing and we shouldn't try to make it up. We shouldn't try to be like, hey, it's okay. Like, it's easy. All you got to do is walk down here, say you want it, and we'll make it happen. Also, you worried about your finances? We'll get you set up with a lawyer. He'll take all that person's money. You'll be good to go. And it's like, oh, you know what? This sounds like it'll solve all my issues. It sounds like the easiest thing. It sounds like the best thing for me. It sounds like it's much better than on the top of this cliff. They have a nice slide to ride on the way down. There's a ball pit at the bottom and they have ice cream. Like, that's what I have an issue with, because the more appealing that you make that, the more people are going to start jumping off that cliff. And I do think that the design for it was, no, if you jump off that cliff, you're killing a part of yourself. And to make it any less than that, I think, is the issue. I'll go into Mark 19. This is Jesus talking about divorce. So when Jesus had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and went into a region of Judea to the other side of Jordan. Large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. Some Pharisees came to test him. They said, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason?" "Haven't you read," he replied, "that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and will be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate.' Why then," they asked, "did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away?" Jesus replied, "Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. But it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you, anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another woman commits adultery." The disciples said to him, "If this is a situation between a husband and his wife, is it better not to marry?" Jesus replied, "Not everyone can accept this word, but only those to whom it has been given. For there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others. And there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The one who can accept this should accept it." So that was kind of a lot, but my point there was going to Jesus saying that they were saying, well, why did Moses say that it was okay to get a divorce? And Jesus was like, it's because you guys are hard-hearted. Not because it's what's ideal. It's because you guys are hard-hearted, I guess. You put it the best way. Go Jesus. But yeah, I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of hate.
Probably.
But I appreciate you trying to defend, like, push back a little bit, because there is a balance between ideal and how the world is. And I think it's important to acknowledge the ideal. I think it's important to acknowledge how we were created and how things are supposed to be. I do think it is also important to look at the world for what it is.
It's a sinful world.
But I don't think it's okay to, I think where that's dangerous, where that mindset is dangerous, is starting to tolerate.
Well, when it becomes dangerous is when you say, I'm okay with it. I'm okay
Yeah.
with being sinful. It's fine. We're all sinners.
Right. That's the way the
That's
world
when
is.
it's not okay.
That's what yeah. So it's important to look at the way the world is. And it's also important to look at how God has designed it so that we can progress towards
It's
that.
important to try to be, try to live like a Christian. Try to live how Jesus set the example and what Jesus said, right? It's important to try to be like that. We are never going to be like Jesus. Jesus was perfect. We're never going to be that. But I think that it's important to strive to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
And to say like, yeah, I'm going to mess up. It's okay, but I'm going to try to do better. I think having that mindset of I'm going to do better is what's important.
It does make me wonder a little bit. People who, because I think one of the arguments for why gay people should get married is because they were born that way and they can't help it. But I just heard a recent argument that just because you were born a certain way doesn't mean that it was good. Like God, we were created in God's image, but we're also broken.
And we're also being spiritually attacked constantly.
And so there's a way that we're born that isn't right. And there's things that we're born, there's impulses and things about us that are just a part of us that doesn't mean that it's a good thing. I was born this way does not mean that it's a good thing.
Right.
So there's this one guy, Christopher Yuan, who lived the gay lifestyle, but I think now he's single. I don't know if he's open. I don't know too much about his story, but gave his life to Christ and then he's single now. And I think that that's okay too. I don't think that it's like, oh, if you're gay, you need to be with a woman.
Right. And that's kind of where, like when you were talking about the eunuchs.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it's like some people chose to be that way.
Yeah. If you cannot overcome your sexual desires, it might be better to be a eunuch is kind of what some people have chosen to be a eunuch because it's easier for them to just not deal with sex at all than to try to.
Yeah. And I think there's also that argument of like, oh, you can't be gay and be Christian. I think you totally can.
You can be gay, you just can't act gay. I think I told you that earlier.
It's when you act on that sinful desire, on that desire of the flesh, when it becomes a problem.
So you can be like, I kind of like guys a little bit more than I like women, like sexually. And that I think it's giving into that temptation. So that's kind of one of your struggles, I guess. And then some people say, oh, well, they're born that way. So you're telling them they were born wrong. I think we're all born wrong with things that are wrong with us. And I think that
we're all born with a sinful nature.
Why it's so hard is because we live in this sexual age where everything is about sex, right?
End times, brother.
Maybe.
I believe it. I believe that
there's strong arguments.
I believe that we're seeing the signs of the end times. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. Y'all, don't even get me started on that.
2, 1.
But, yeah, I believe it. I think this is probably a good spot to end. I think we've been talking for a while.
Gosh, that got
deep.
Yeah, that got crazy. So we're going to get canceled.
Probably.
I'll get canceled.
But you know what? I think that's part of being like openly Christian on the internet.
Yeah. 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 And I feel very convicted, and I think that I have a lot of strong opinions that are like that. And
yeah, because like, for example, like Matt and Abby, like on Unplanned podcast, it's like they say some things that make me think they're Christian, but they're not openly Christian.
They can kind of play it safe.
And they don't openly express when if they think something is wrong or not biblical. Whereas like I have a strong conviction of like to not do that.
Yeah, not play it safe, not try to appeal to people.
Like speak the truth. Yeah. I have a strong, and to share the truth. Right.
Yeah, I feel that.
And I wonder, I wish I could like text them and ask them like, are you guys Christian? Because I don't know. But whatever. Matt Nebby, if you see this, I would like to talk to you. I would like to have a conversation with you. But yeah.
And the bigger you get, the more dangerous it becomes. Because if you've built your entire audience off of kind of playing it neutral, then all of a sudden you start being controversial. There's a good chance that a large part of your audience is going to leave. I think it's okay to be canceled.
And then I think that if you
just need to be canceled.
If you build your...
I just think you need to be canceled for the right reasons, is what I'm saying.
Right. And I think like if you build your platform on like say if we built our platform on a non-Christian, like our audience was not Christian because we didn't talk about the Bible or we didn't talk about Jesus, then I think that's where it gets dangerous with how you're living. You know,
what do you
mean? That's when
like trying to hide God a little bit.
Yeah. Like that's when it gets dangerous of like, it starts to affect your faith. It starts to affect the way you're living. It starts to affect the way you interact with people because you don't want to be controversial. You don't want to get canceled. But whereas like if our audience is Christian, the only people we're going to have, the only haters we're going to have are non-Christians. And then it's like, I don't care.
I might have some Christian haters too.
At least you're hearing the truth. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening and watching. And yeah, this was fun. This was a good conversation. What? Do you have more to say?
I know. I thought you were gonna tie it up there, but you just kind of, you like toss up the ending and then you pass it off to me.
How am I supposed to pass it, or how am I supposed to
I don't know.
cut it off?
I thought you were just gonna wrap it up.
I don't know how to do that. All right. Thank you guys for listening and watching. We love you guys. What you can also do, what I would like to start doing is if you guys have prayer requests, please send them to us. We would love to pray for you guys.
That'd be interesting. Throw them up on our stories or something.
Yeah. We'd love to engage with you guys and get to know you.
Another thing that a lot of people do is they kind of throw their recommendations out at the end of their podcast. And if you don't have one, that's okay. I just have one that I feel strongly about. Plants vs. Zombies. We went to Red Robin and they had a little kiosk and Phoebe was playing the games and one of them was Plants vs. Zombies. And I was playing it with her and I was just having her collect all the little suns because that was easy. And I was planting all the plants. But I downloaded it on my phone.
Oh no.
And you got to turn off you got to turn on airplane mode, turn off your Wi-Fi and cellular and stuff like that so that you don't get all the ads. But I've been playing that. I was playing that last night and that is a fun game. And it was so simple. And it's like, I feel like it's an actual, it doesn't feel like my mind was just turned off and it was engaging. It was a puzzle and it's problem solving and it's fast paced.
Plants vs. Zombies sponsor
Plants
us.
versus everybody. Yeah. Everybody go play that game. All right. Anyway, love you guys. See you next week.
Bye.